I discovered what is now known as the house and ballroom community in about 1985. I was 20 years old, and I learned about this underground community, and it was spectacular for me because it's like I walked into an event and I had an instant family. And I had never experienced that. And at my age, I loved that whole sense of belonging. But I also was fascinated at the talent, that was coming, that I was watching as everybody was walking. And I became quickly interested in ballroom. The earliest ball that we know on record is 1869. And this was the beginning of the Harlem, what they called the Harlem drag balls. There was music and people would go and they would dance and the guys would get dressed up in these elegant gowns and stuff like that. And they would try to look like the stars of that time period. Harlem drag ball scene began to become what we have today, which is the house and ballroom scene. That changed in the 60s. Ballroom houses were set up like a house. You have a mother and your father of the house. And the reason they did that in that particular era is because a lot of kids were being pushed out of their homes once their families found out that they were gay and so, or they were living on the streets and they were homeless. And so at that particular era of it, you had a lot of mothers and fathers who became the mothers for these homeless youth. And they taught them survival and helped feed them and get them a place to stay and help them to get back into school or put them on the right track. When I officially decided to open my house, it was actually 2015 and I had some kids and they wanted to walk, so I made everybody walk, and that's when the House of Soulja itself decided to open. That's how I became a big part of the ballroom community from there. One of the things that I'm most proud about when I talk about ballroom is that ballroom people have been a part of doing the work from the beginning. They've already were tossed out and thrown out and felt like people didn't care. A lot of the white organizations, it wasn't their priority of worrying about the kids in El Barrio. So when HIV and AIDS happened and we were dying, and nobody wasn't looking out for us, or no one was coming searching for us, or coming to ask us questions, we did it for ourselves. So Suzanne Bosch, who does a lot of stuff in nightlife and things, she had worked and organized with an organization called DIFA, and came together and came up with the idea of trying to raise money for around HIV and AIDS. And they came up with this event called the Love Ball. And in '89 was the first Love Ball. And then when the organizations decided to get money and funding and realizing that they were missing a huge part of the community and population, they reached out to the ballroom to hire us to be a part of that. It's better when someone from the community reaches out to another person in the community, because you know that person, you have trust of that person, so you can actually have a different kind of conversation. So in 1990, an organization called, we know it as GMHC today, but that's Gay Men's Health Crisis, had created an outreach program called the House of Latex. And it was kind of their way of trying to connect to the house and ballroom community. This part of the community that no one necessarily cared for, nobody was reaching out to them, they lived on the piers or they hung out down there. And so here was this program that connected it to it in the House of Latex. Those kids, they spoke that language, they were part of houses and things. Out of that became the first latex ball, which was in 1993, was the very first ball event. And it was an amazing event. And of course, the ballroom community came out to this event. And so it has been one of the largest balls for the ballroom community since then. I have been fighting cancer. Actually, it's 2021, and it's been 20 years, and it's the first time this week, actually, I've been taking a series of tests that doctors can actually say to me that I am in remission and showing no signs of cancer. But I've had cancer 3 times. I was hospitalized for months. And I felt like I was about to die before I actually had a chance to live. So I, who had been so conservative around my sexuality, around dating people, someone who had survived that worst dark period, someone that was helping other people, I became irresponsible. I never did drugs, never had an interest to do drugs. I barely even drink, a social drinker. But at that time, I began to drink more, I began to take more chances and participate in risky sex. It is what it is, that's what I did. I ended up getting quite sick, and I thought it was just the fact that I was still recovering from cancer and so forth. And I went and took a test, and when the doctor told me that I tested positive, I didn't believe him. So I went and took another test. The test came back positive. And of course, during that time, they used to ask you, who you had sex with, how do you think you contacted it, who do you think gave it to you? And I looked squarely at the nurse and said, I gave it to myself. Because no one is responsible for my health and my body but me. So I did this to me. And from that, it took me a minute, but I had to pick myself up and say, look what you've done, right? You stood here helping other people, but you turned around and you became the statistic that you were trying to help people not to become. So in 2010, that's when I really kind of ramped up, and I decided to start telling my story and talk to a lot of the girls that had cancer or had things that was happening to them, and it was causing them to do behaviors that might be riskier and stuff. And to talk to young people and realize that how do we expect someone to protect their bodies when we are telling them that you're an abomination? God doesn't love you because you're doing these things. You're living a lifestyle that your family tells you is wrong and you're going to go to hell. So if I'm this person and I'm going to go to hell or I'm going to do this and that, why would I expect that person is going to now protect that and going to go and put on a condom? And so part of my journey was admitting some of that for myself. I had issues of my own self-worth. I had issues about protecting what I used to hold so sacred. Where was that breakdown for me in my 40s? So once I confronted my own truth and came to terms with it, I wanted to do more things to help others become more aware of it. And when I realized that there was power behind my story, that other people connected to it, now I live in my truth a lot more. I talk a lot more about it. I let people know when they're having conversations and things are happening that I'm a person that's living from that experience as well. And I'm thankful I'm still here, so.